Do I want to stream? Maybe. Sometimes I wonder. And now we're going to go live on TikTok. Bear with me. So glad I EQ'd my mics today. I hope it's the last time I do this. So I wrote down all of my specs because I'm like, man, if I have to go back and redo all of these settings because I have to watch a video when I do it. All right, we are officially live. So we're going to do some sound checks real quick. Just to double check. All right. Sound checks real quick. All right, that sounds good. The sound isn't perfect, but it's better than what we've had. I think from now on I'm going to start playing music and just queuing up some music. Oh man. Yay, there I am. Let's go ahead and test some audio. Okay, great. Excellent. Well. Let's go ahead and share this live everywhere we can. I'd appreciate it. Share it far, share it wide. We can never have enough of this, can we? We must. Some of these big names I'm afraid to share because they might be like, you know what? Sick and tired of you sharing your stuff. You don't think I'm actually going to watch, do you? You don't think I'm going to watch your content. I'm like, well, it would be nice if you did. But that's okay. That's okay. Some days are diamonds, some days are stones. I've got the lighting just like I want it. So, you know what? All is good. All is good in the world. Hey, everybody. Good to see you. Today's reading is brought to you by Leinenkugel's Berry Weiss. I stocked up on that stuff. Tell you what. I'll tell you what, for a fruit beer, it's one of the best. I do like Hoegaarden, though. It's pretty nice and cloudy, juice-wise. We love juice. We drink juice here. So how's the audio compared to last Sunday? Last Sunday was hell on earth, I gotta tell you. I had anything you could think of that could possibly go wrong went wrong, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've never done this before, but hey, I'm gonna keep plugging. Eventually, I'm gonna get it right. I do like the layout just a little bit better. And what I did was I double checked. What's nice about TikTok Studio, we love the TikTok shop, is it allows you to see what people see on their camera phones, or excuse me, on their phones, not their camera. And so I tried to balance all of the graphics and camera to match what people are going to see. So that's okay. We're just going to keep plugging away. We're going to keep trying. So yeah, always better to have a backup plan. That thank absolutely, sweet pea. So we are live on TikTok. We are live on YouTube. I'm very, very orange on YouTube, and I'm not going to change a damn thing because I have messed with the camera settings so much. I'm afraid of really messing it up. Oh, what can you do? Oh man. But as long as we keep recording, as long as we keep going. So how is it? Oh yeah, it does look a little bit busy, doesn't it? Yeah. I got to work on that. Eventually, I'm going to everybody who is OCD and has ADD will be pleased, pleasantly surprised. Yes, today's reading is going to be from American Crusade. Hey, you can read it this time. I've got it. Yes, this is the pick of the book, American Crusade. For those of you watching on your cameras, for those of you watching on YouTube. Oh, and I've got a nice little treat. Thanks. Oh, you didn't hit a nerve. Don't worry about that. You're not. Hey, I grew up in fundamentalist Christianity. There's nothing you can do to hurt me. There is nothing you could do you could say that could hurt me. Well, maybe a few things, but anyway, we're not going to talk about that. I've got a treat for you. After we are done with American Crusade, I am going to be going on to Howard Zinn's A People's History of the United States. I got this for $8. It was literally on sale, and then they had another sale. I don't know what, I mean, I've never seen a book this big sell for $8. Unless it was used. Oh, mods. Oh, don't worry. Our mods are friendly. Our mods are friendly as long as you don't piss them off. mm. But let's do what we came here to do. Please keep liking the live. Please keep double tapping. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tapping the screen. If you would like to become a skeptic, please hit that skeptic heart. Join the skeptic team. I got it from the TikTok shop. Believe it or not, Howard Zinn's The People's History of America, it was at $8. It ended up being $9 with taxes and shipping. And I'm like, I've got to get this book. So I had to get it, and I bought it. I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I'm broke next week. You're never going to find that book for sale. Now, it is delicate. The cover is paper thin, so I have to really treat it with kid gloves. And for the algorithm, I am advertising on the TikTok shop. So you can probably find this book on the TikTok shop as well. Would not surprise me. You can find it on Amazon. For those of you watching on YouTube, I have a link for in the description. You can find the book. You can find the description of the link in the book. Okay. I know. $22? That's the lowest you've seen? Ugh. It's terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But anyway. All right. $22. Yeah, I got it for $8, no lie. I couldn't believe it. And as a matter of fact, I put it in my shopping list showcase. So if you click on my profile, click on my showcase, you might find it for $8. I hope. Because every time I buy something, I showcase it. So Hey, you never know what I'm gonna buy. I bought it. I bought the world's smallest chainsaw for $39. I mean, it was marked down from like 100. Again, it was a sale on top of a sale on top of a sale, and they just kept marking it down. So by the time I got through my cart and I clicked order, it the chainsaw had gone down to like $34. I kid you not. I don't always get these deals, but when I do, mm-mm-mm. All right, without further ado. Ah, that was nice juice. Oh yeah, it's mini but mighty. Yeah, I actually took I took a video of me chopping down. I was literally chopping logs about this big around, and it just went right through it. I was like, unbelievable. All electronic. Oh, Sweet Pea reached number 24, level 24 of a gifter. Good show. Good show. Please keep liking, keep tapping. I appreciate it. Let's move on. Chapter 11. Religious freedom is killing us. The COVID cases. Leviticus 26:25. I will send a plague among you. I'm covered in Jesus' blood, the Ohio churchgoer told CNN. No, she wasn't worried about contracting COVID or infecting other people at the grocery store, Walmart, or Home Depot, all of which she admitted on camera to visiting. She wasn't worried, she said, while wearing her seatbelt because of Jesus' blood. Her interview went viral online. I don't know if she went viral in the other sense, but the governor said that the virus spread like wildfire in Ohio churches. The full clip shows another worshiper using the same language. The blood of Jesus cures every disease. Does it, though? Does it? I don't know about that. The sort of unanimity is no coincidence. The day CNN interviewed the churchgoers leaving Solid Rock Church in Lebanon, Ohio, Pastor Lawrence Bishop II preached the sickness and the cure. Video shows church musicians encouraging the maskless worshipers to sing along. Come on, open your mouth. Every 20 minutes of singing, they passed the collection plates, and Bishop asked the congregation to cheer and shout, to raise the roof for the King of Kings. Hallelujah for the blood of Jesus. Handala, handala. The blood of Jesus was the message. Bishop mentioned the blood some 36 times in the 52-minute sermon. He attacked the media and the health department. Here's one message I have for the health department. None of us are sick. We are covered in the blood of Jesus. None of us are dying. None of us are on our deathbeds. I got news for you. We're going to be dying. We're not going to be dying either, because Psalm 91:7 says, 1,000 might fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. We got the blood of Jesus to cover us. His followers took the message to heart and regurgitated on CNN. Bishop quoted 91:6, Psalm 91:6 accurately and with proper context. You will not fear the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday, reads the verse. His biblical exegesis was accurate, but also deadly. And it was preached more widely than we realize. Greg Locke, remember him? Please keep sharing the like. Share, share, share. I appreciate it. The preacher who burned my first book, The Founding Myth. Oh, yes. We remember this book, don't we? This is the book that Greg Locke burned on his church property. Andrew Seidel sent him a signed copy with a personal note. He didn't even get past the first page, the page with the inscription on there. And then he burns the book in a burn barrel. How schnozzy of him, huh? Mm-mm-mm. He burned it with a blowtorch. That's right. Vowed early in the pandemic never to close Global Vision Bible Church, and became more extreme as the pandemic wore on. In one anti-masking tirade at Dunkin' Donuts. I remember his tirade. Locke screamed at the staff, "I'm going to take these work boots and I'm going to kick your teeth down your throat." By July, Locke believed himself an American revolutionary, proclaiming, "We will not shut down church services. We will not social distance at church. We will not require masks. We will not bow. Independence Day. Hashtag no mask." Locke eventually banned masks at his services and railed against vaccines. He encouraged his followers to join him on January 5th, 2021 at a Trump rally in Washington, D.C. on the eve of the January 6th insurrection. Yes, we are on YouTube. Look for me at Skeptically G. You can find my YouTube at Skeptically G. Please give me a follow and a subscription. I'd appreciate it. I need all the help I can get on YouTube. Yes, you can follow me. Usually when I do TikTok lives on Sunday, you'll see all of my graphics that I use, all of the pictures, screen captures, also recordings. You hear it on TikTok, but you can actually see it on YouTube. Unfortunately, I can't merge the two together. I'm not sure why they won't let me do that, but that's on them. Yes, it's Skeptically G on YouTube. I also have Skeptically Speaking, or excuse me. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm on Skeptically G, and then on Sunday I do the Sunday night show on Skeptically Speaking. I've got eventually I'll get the names figured out. Don't worry about that. Here we go. Yes. January 6th insurrection. At the rally, Locke preached Christian nationalism and thank God for the Proud Boys, a group that we can lock shields with and we can come shoulder to shoulder with to fight and, if need be, lay down our life for this nation. Literally, Skeptically Looking is now Skeptically G. Sorry, Sweet Pea. It's now Skeptically G. That's about as creative as I could get. Sorry about that. So Skeptically Speaking on the Sunday show, Skeptically G on the show that we're on now on YouTube. Mainstream preachers joined in. How bad do you have to be where you lock arm in arm with Schnazis and authoritarians? Can you believe that? I can. Christianity always seems to go back to its fascist roots, doesn't it? Unbelievable. Trump supported Trump. The primaries joined Trump's Evangelical Advisory Board alongside Paula White, James Dobson, and others in his Christian Nationalist Freedom Sunday celebration with Vice President Mike Pence and HUD Secretary Ben Cross. TikTok keeps the video records. Yes, I can. I do have the live records. Yes. Don't ask me. It's so much. It's just easier running them both at the same time because I'd have to copy it to the computer and then paste it to the YouTube. So, forgive me. I'm disorganized. Jeffries claimed that sin was more lethal than COVID. Ooh, you don't say. See, the problem is we have all inherited a virus. Dr. Carson, a virus that is even more deadly than the coronavirus. It's the virus of sin. We're all born with this virus. The church had an outbreak just before the MAGA service, and it's never been explained what, if any, spread may have resulted from the event. One expert from Johns Hopkins called the church's coronavirus response appalling. Oh, the other book, you'll find it. It's all there. So I went ahead and read this entire book, and it's all there on the site. You just got to look for it. Look for this cover, and you'll see all 6 or 7 videos. Yeah, I started reading it in 2018, I think, 2019, and yeah, and it was a long pause. There was like a 4-year hiatus, and then I picked it up again, and we got through it. We did. But what I did was I put all the chapters in the title so that way you can keep track of where you are. So you don't have to keep looking through each video. You'll kind of know just by the title. I hope that helps. So usually I do 2 chapters every video, and that's how I got through it. Yes, to say that this church's coronavirus response was appalling is being charitable. This theology preached in too many American churches was best summed up by a street preacher as COVID first pummeled the supply chain. You need Jesus more than you need toilet paper. You can clean your butt, but who's going to clean your sin? Toilet paper can't wash away your sins. But what happens when you don't have toilet paper? What are you going to use? Jesus? Is Jesus going to wipe your ass? I'm just asking. I'm just reporting the news. These churches believe that they were more important than grocery stores or hospitals because sin is an illness that condemns one to eternity of hell. Sure, doctors and nurses are on the front lines fighting COVID, but have they considered saving souls? This goes to the heart of the church's existence. They believe they are more important, more essential than everything else. That belief, that essential label, would reshape religious freedom law. Thank you for that, Sweet Pea. Appreciate that. Pin it again if you need to. The coronavirus seems to haunt churches. Worship services are actually designed to be super spreader events, to spread the religion. Spread the word, spread the good news, but the air that carries those words also carries suspended virus-laden droplets. When the coronavirus was searching for a foothold in the United States, churches provided. By April 1st, the health board in Sacramento County, which is one of the 25 most populous counties in the country, traced 1/3 of all coronavirus cases to the churches. Bethany Slavic Missionary Church, a Pentecostal church at the geographic center of the county with a history of anti-gay rhetoric, was an epicenter of more than 6 dozen confirmed cases by early April 2020. It spread like wildfire. Wildfire, said Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, explaining how one worshiper infected 53 other people at his church. The primary spread, some of whom spread the virus to at least 38 others, secondary spread, for a total of 91 known cases traced back to a single infected worshiper at a single service. Patient 0 infected one worshiper who brought the virus home and infected his 31-year-old wife and 4 kids ranging from 1 to 11 years old. There were also several documented cases of tertiary spread, worshipers taking the virus home to family members who then spread it to coworkers. I'll tell you what, I hope we have learned, and I don't think we have. I hope we've learned from this. But can we say that we have? Yeah. Yeah, they spread disinformation. That's saying it mildly. Okay, country officials in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, tracked 12 deaths, 213 cases to a worship celebration at the United House of Prayer for All People, an evangelical Christian church that refers to its leaders as Daddy. Ugh. That one cluster spread to perhaps 7 other states, including California and New York. Overall, religious gatherings were responsible for at least 211 clusters across North Carolina, fueling nearly 3,000 cases, more than any other category except schools and meatpacking businesses. And 44 deaths, higher than everything except independent living facilities. This story was repeated endlessly. Even after the vaccine was available, the People's Church in Salem, Oregon sued the government over public health measures, and the pastor vowed to never stop holding in-person services. Months later, that pastor and his wife were hospitalized. And the church was the epicenter of one of the worst outbreaks in the state, infecting at least 87 people at the time when cases in the state were rapidly declining. Why in the goddamn hell? They should have been taken to their church and left to lay them out on the pews and let the church pray for them and see which works. Does prayer work or does medicine work? I am sick and tired of these religious fanatics claiming the power of prayer, but as soon as they get sick, off to the hospital they go. Immediately, without question. Right to the hospital. And then as soon as the medicine flows, and as soon as the healing starts, then they give praise. Oh, well, it's the power of prayer. I remember distinctly a member of our church, this is years ago before the pandemic, this person contracted major pneumonia. I mean, it was one of those deadly strains that left her almost in a coma. No, I take that back. Definitely in a coma. And I remember distinctly we held an overnight vigil. We prayed around the clock for about 2 days, from Thursday, Friday into Saturday, and then by Sunday, I think we got news that she had stabilized. I think back to that time. I think back to that day. If this sick parishioner had been brought to the church, laid out on the pews so we could pray, this person would not be alive today. I am convinced of that. If all we had relied on was prayer, this person would be dead. To God be the glory. This story was repeated endlessly. Okay, we read that. In a pandemic, the choice to worship communally is it's not an individual choice. Worship can spread the virus to people who cross paths with that worshiper, and then people who encounter them. The choice can put immense pressure on the local healthcare system too, affecting not only other infected people or people who simply need help, but our frontline workers. It is a selfish choice with widespread impact that didn't concern the newest Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett. Was a conservative Notre Dame professor when Trump made her an appeals court judge. 3 years later, she was on the Supreme Court, ready to aid the crusade. Senator Feinstein was inelegant, but not wrong when she said that the dogma lives loudly within Barrett. Barrett's personal religious beliefs matter, but not as much as her pattern of saying that Catholicism should take precedence when it collides with professional responsibilities. These people have no care. They do not care. Their dogma is king. Their dogma will remain. Yes, please hit that orange heart and become a skeptic for the cost of 1 TikTok coin. You too can become a skeptic. I want to see tons of names with the title skeptic. Please join the team. I'd love to have you. Let's see, where was I? Oh, responsibilities. When judicial nominees have said that their faith trumps their oath of office, senators must ask about those beliefs. Plenty of Catholics agree. In 1957, William Brennan was asked about his Catholicism during his Supreme Court confirmation hearing and gave an excellent answer. I took my oath as unreservedly as you did. There isn't any obligation of our faith superior to that. What shall control me is the oath that I took to support the Constitution and the laws of the United States. How very nice. Of course, one can be religious and a judge, but when judges don that robe, they must be a judge first and set their personal religion aside. The Constitution comes first. Barrett disagreed. She criticized Brennan's answer. We do not defend this position as the proper response for a Catholic judge to take with respect to abortion or the death penalty. Barrett recommended that judges conform their own behavior to the church's standard and declined later to repudiate this recommendation. Which church was she talking about? She wasn't talking about the Catholic Church under Pope Francis. I wonder what church that was. Maybe that was the cult that she was raised in. That was the first red flag. Barrett also added her name to a Catholic anti-abortion group's 2006 letter that said, "It's time to put an end to the barbaric legacy of Roe v. Wade and restore laws that protect the lives of the unborn children." In 2015, she signed a letter from Catholic women to the Synod Fathers in Christ that expressed the author's fidelity to and gratitude for the doctrines of the Catholic Church and our confidence in the Synod of Bishops as it strives to strengthen the Church's evangelizing mission. The letter raised a number of topics Barrett will or has ruled on, including reproductive justice and LGBTQ equality. In 2006, Barrett told law students at the Notre Dame Law School commencement that a legal career is but a means to an end. I'm going to repeat that. A legal career is but a means to an end, and that end is building the kingdom of God. Imagine if she had said this as a Muslim, huh? Yeah. Imagine if she had been a Muslim and she had said that. Barrett belongs to a charismatic Catholic group called People of Praise that takes the kingdom of God language literally. Former members call it a cult. The group labeled women handmaids, including Barrett's mother, and teaches that a married woman is under her husband's authority. He is, in fact, her personal pastoral head. Whatever she does requires at least his tacit approval. Members take an oath, which the group calls a covenant, as an unbreakable pact with God. We agree to obey the direction of the Holy Spirit manifested in and through these ministries in full harmony with the Church. This is People of Praise. I need custom stickers for subs. Let me see if I can work on that. I'm not sure where that is right now, and I got to keep reading. Barrett's letters, articles, and speeches and her membership is in a Handmaid's Tale type order are a pattern that points to a belief about whether her fidelity to her order and religion trump her oath of office. That pattern was clear to any observer, and we know Leo was watching especially closely as the monitor of ideological purity. Trump's reception of Barrett at the White House was as much a religious event as it was political. It also became a super spreader event, in the words of Dr. Anthony Fauci, and infected Trump himself. The Trump administration didn't require basic precautions like masks or contact tracing, though both would have been easy given White House security. Among the 200 attendees were top crusaders, including representatives from the Alliance Defending Freedom, the Beckett Fund, First Liberty, Leo's Network, and more. Perhaps 50 people tested positive as a result, including pastors, Donald and Melania Trump, and the senators Mike Lee and Tom Tillis, both of whom sat on the Senate Judiciary Committee and attended Barrett's hearing in person despite their infection. Former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows disclosed in his book, released in December 2021, that Trump tested positively shortly after the superspreader event, leading some to wonder whether he was patient zero. Trump was hospitalized with COVID a week later. That she does. Amy Barrett needs to be investigated. More importantly, she needs to be impeached and taken from her judicial role. Along with Clarence Thomas and Alito. The Barrett superspreader event marks a directional shift in the American religious freedom law. Before Barrett, indeed, for about at least a century before Barrett was on the court, There was little doubt the government had broad powers to fight a pandemic, including in ways that may inconvenience people and curtail freedom. This is line 2. Your religious freedom is not a license to violate the rights of others, including by spreading lethal viruses. In 1905, the Supreme Court upheld mandatory vaccines. In 1905, the Supreme Court upheld mandatory vaccines because real liberty for all could not exist if someone was allowed to act regardless of the injury that may be done to others. Amazing. They had figured out in 1905 that this is a good thing, even if it became forced vaccination. In 1944, the court explained that the right to practice religion freely does not include liberty to expose the community or the child to communicable diseases, or the latter to ill health or death. One federal judge summed up the centuries of law quite nicely by invoking a famous phrase used by Justice Robert Jackson in 1949, First Amendment case. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. The First Amendment may not be used to make it one. Wow, smart cookies, weren't they, back in the 1940s? What happened? Even in the first months before Barrett, the court twice refused churches' attempts to declare themselves immune from public health measures meant to fight COVID. Both times, Roberts had been unwilling to agree with his fellow conservatives. The four other conservatives, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, were eager to give Christians weekly superspreader passes. To the extent this evinced a rift between Roberts and the other conservatives, it was about how to implement the conservative agenda, about methodology, not ideology. Roberts wants slow change to preserve the legitimacy of the court because that is the only currency the court has. An unpopular court cannot enforce its opinion or stave off congressional interference, i.e. adding new seats to rebalance the court. Roberts wants to implement the conservative agenda incrementally, not so rapidly as to be self-defeating. The death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the imposition of Barrett tipped that balance, with 5 votes for rapid conservative change, not Roberts' incremental approach. Interestingly, the 5 eager conservatives received an object lesson in Roberts' incrementalism when they badly bungled the Texas abortion law, SB 8, which instituted mob rule over the womb. The backlash to the court after it indefensibly allowed the law to go into effect seems to have taught Kavanaugh and Barrett the effectiveness in Roberts' politically savvy incremental approach. The radical shift in American law was an unsigned midnight ruling on the eve of Thanksgiving on the court's shadow docket, a 15-paragraph, 5-4 decision in which Barrett flipped the court. Shadow docket cases aren't meant to alter substantive law, but simply to deal with emergency cases as established law dictates. The opinion came on what was, at the time, the peak of the worst 7-day average for new coronavirus cases, the 4th worst day for COVID overall, 183,000 new cases, and the worst single day of deaths since May 7th, when the initial wave swept the country. Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn and an Orthodox Jewish organization, Agudath Israel of America, challenged a public health order claiming it violated their religious freedom by discriminating against houses of worship. The Crusaders were behind this attack, too. The dioceses were represented by Rudy Giuliani's former deputy mayor. Yes, please tap that screen. I appreciate it. And Agatha by the Becket Fund. Other Crusaders brought and would bring many similar challenges. Yes, indeed. Similar challenges indeed. New York Public Health Order of the Crusaders and Catholic Church challenge as a violation of religious freedom actually treated religious worship more favorably compared to similar events. But for the newly remade Supreme Court, If any events or organizations were treated more favorably than the churches, even if they had no risk factors or if people depended on them to survive, that differential treatment was discrimination. Remember, the dominant caste sees equality as hostility. I will read that again. The dominant caste of Christianity sees equality as hostility. Discrimination is measured by looking at whether similar things receive equal treatment. Walking, biking, driving a car, driving a semi-truck, or flying all modes of transportation. But the government doesn't discriminate against pilots or truckers because they're regulated differently than pedestrians or drivers. The risk posed by each is different, and religious worship poses some unique risks of spreading COVID. Sadly, many of the reasons people love church are the very things that help the virus spread. Everyone arrives and leaves church at basically the same time. Filing in and out of the building is in a scrum. Hugs, handshakes, and other welcome customs ignore social distancing. Taking communion. It's right there in the name. Communal, community, shared food and drink, shared bathrooms, busy before and after services, singing and praying aloud, often in older buildings built with no airflow or retrofitted ventilation systems. In such conditions, social distancing and masks are not enough. Our churches have followed protocols. Masks go in one door and out the other. Social distancing, and still people have tested positive, one Methodist bishop in Louisiana told the New York Times. So worship is not like going to the store for food staples one needs to survive, or even to the liquor store, or dropping your car or bike off for repairs, or visiting the bank for a quick transaction so you can afford to eat or pay rent, or even visiting a lawyer to get a last will and testament drawn up during uncertain times. All comparisons that drew the justice's ire. In those scenarios, people are in and out in a matter of minutes, and they are moving about, not sitting in one shared droplet-laden airspace. They come and go randomly, spread out over a 16, even 24-hour day, and not in big crowds twice a day. Worship services are more like watching a movie or play in a theater, or attending an outdoor sporting event or concert, or even a lecture. When the pandemic first hit, New York shut everything down. The pause ended every in-person gathering of any size for any reason. Grocery stores, hospitals, and some other essential entities stayed open in person with masking and social distancing. Churches, the buildings themselves, could remain open in the public, but no gatherings were permitted, even for worship. Let's see here. This contained the spread, but as New York began to reopen, the viruses took hold again. New York shifted its strategy to focus on areas about to have an outbreak instead of total shutdowns. When a cluster of positive tests flared up, heightened restrictions immediately went into place for that geographical area, or red zone, and restrictions faded in progressive zones, expanding from center of the hotspot, orange, and then yellow zones. This prevented the clusters from growing and spreading. The goal was to shut down in-person contact in red zones entirely, except at the essential places. Restaurants were closed for in-person dining. Schools were immediately closed, but churches were actually favored, followed to open with occupancy limits of 10 in red zones and 25 in orange. While comparable activities, plays, indoor sporting events, casinos, bowling alleys, movie theaters, gyms, and even more were closed completely in both zones. In-person gatherings in yellow zones were limited to 25 people, while houses of worship could fill up to 50% of maximum occupancy. So the Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn, which can hold 13,000 people, could have had 6,500 worshipers in a yellow zone compared to non-religious gatherings limited to 25 people. So you see how churches were favored during this time. They were given preferential treatment. throughout the entire pandemic, and yet they claim discrimination. Tap the screen like you tap the mods? Yes, you can do that. Please. We encourage you to tap the mods. Tap that mod. Okay, moving on. Churches were favored, but with five COVID justices but the five COVID justices decided that these favorable rules strike at the very heart of the First Amendment's guarantee of religious liberty. Their rationale was thin. The controlling opinion is short and irrational. More than anything else, churches, crusaders, and the justices seemed offended that churches weren't labeled essential. Thank you for joining. I appreciate. Some governors have deemed liquor stores and abortion clinics as essential, but have left out churches and other houses of worship. It's not right. So I'm correcting this injustice and calling houses of worship essential. Trump complained from the podium in the White House briefing room, and then declared houses of worship, churches, synagogues, and mosques as essential places that provided essential services. In 130 or so seconds, Trump had said essential 8 times. In 130 seconds or so. Okay, I get it. The declaration had absolutely no legal effect, though the CDC issued slightly updated guidelines for houses of worship. It was a quintessential Trumpian move, bombast, repetition, and a trivial action, added for later exaggeration. Like a mama bird feeding her chicks, Trump ground up the grievances of his base and regurgitated the mix back to them. The Crusaders cheered Trump for defending religious liberty. Woo! The court's midnight decision striking down New York's public health measure is disturbingly similar to Trump's pandering. Gorsuch's longer concurring opinion reads like a man pissed that churches weren't labeled essential, an emotion he manifests with scare quotes. Religious institutions have made plain that they stand ready, able, and willing to follow all the safety precautions required of essential businesses, and perhaps more besides. The only explanation for treating religious places differently seems to be a judgment that what happens there just isn't as essential as what happens in secular places. Indeed, the governor is remarkably frank about this. In his judgment, laundry and liquor, travel and tools are all essential, while traditional religious exercises are not. This is exactly the kind of discrimination the First Amendment forbids. If the essential designation had been a different word, I wonder whether churches would have rebelled against public health measures. What if the label had been something boring like infrastructure related and infrastructure unrelated? Better yet, basic and higher. Grocery stores and hospitals meet basic needs. Churches meet a higher need. Public policy, especially in an emergency like a pandemic, shouldn't have to worry about tone or offending religion. The fact that health officials are considered offensive, unbelievable. And now they got to deal with a measles outbreak. Just what the doctor ordered. This ought to be plainly stated. Religion is not essential. People don't die if they stop worshiping. Thank you for the follow, laddie. Thank you for the follow. We need food, water, and air. We need clothing and shelter, medicine, and an income to purchase these necessities. We don't need to worship a God in person in a particular place every week, especially one would think if that God is truly everywhere. Remember? It's nice to have community, religious or not, but its absence will not kill us, though in a pandemic, community might prove fatal. We crave explanations and certainty and community, things that religion can bring, even if falsely, but we don't need it. And if you want to, please become a skeptic. Hit that orange heart and join the skeptic team. Would love to have you. Where was I? The government is downplaying the role that the religions play in the lives of Americans and suggesting it's more important to go to the gym than go to church, said one Crusader spokesperson. In the Ohio church that was covered in the blood of Jesus, Pastor Bishop praised proclamations by Florida and Texas governors that churches church is considered an essential business. I'm glad they added the word business in there because let's be frank and let's be honest, let's be real. Church is a business. Untaxed, but a business nonetheless. Essential business. And covetously noted that Home Depot and Planned Parenthood were open. In a way, the court was adopting this theology to interpret the law. That's a problem under line 3, but a real problem here is line 2. The Ohio worshiper coded in the gore of her Savior didn't just visit her church. She was all over town. Churches spread the virus around the community. Churches weren't asking the Supreme Court for a right to worship. They were asking for a right to risk everyone's health and safety. They demanded a right to put more strain on doctors, nurses, and frontline workers, to burden a hospital and medical systems at medical capacity. I cannot tell you how heartbreaking it is watching a video done by a healthcare worker who worked a 15-hour shift, hardly any breaks, on her feet all day, totally exhausted. I cannot tell you the heartbreak that these people felt as they watched their patients pass away. Watching their patients suffer from a totally preventable disease. I cannot tell you the heartbreak that these doctors and nurses faced, and the arrogance of these people who believe they had a right to willingly spread a virus that killed hundreds of thousands, up to 1 million people in this country. To watch your patient that you've been fighting to keep them alive, to keep them from coding, when their heart stops, you rush to get them medical help, you revive them. When their lungs collapse or they stop breathing, or when they can no longer breathe on their own, they must be incubated. What heartless ghouls these people are. They had no care for their fellow man. They didn't give a damn about their fellow man and willingly spread diseases like wildfire. Didn't give a damn about the person sitting next to them. And yet claimed to be covered by the blood of Jesus. I'll never get those images out of my mind, watching a 1-year-old struggling for breath, literally on a ventilator, as the machine is pumping and keeping the chest cavity moving, because the virus had turned this baby's lungs to leather and could no longer breathe on her own. The mother filming, live streaming on Facebook, just to bring awareness to people. Hey, take this virus seriously. My young daughter is struggling to breathe now. I hope she made it. I never got an update on that story. And if you can watch a video like that and not care, what kind of a person are you? What kind of a trash human being thinks that way? Who cares? Who cares if I spread a virus? What's that to me? And this is the attitude of these fundamentalist Christians. Where's the milk of human kindness? Where's the forethought? Where's the concern? Where's the patriotism? Whatever happened to a nation's health is a nation's strength? Whatever happened to that? Have we lost it? To burden a hospital and medical systems at maximum capacity. They're wielding religious freedom not just to violate the rights of another citizen, but to claim supremacy over everyone. My God says this, so you have to die. Functionally, this is little different than the human sacrifice or Jesus take the wheel examples. Worse, as many more could die from the reckless believer. This is why we have line 2. The court was not blind to this problem, so it simply rewrote the reality. The state showed the state showed over and over that public health was threatened without these measures, and our highest court chose to ignore that impact. It has not been shown that granting the applications will harm the public. As noted, the state has not claimed that attendance at the applicant's services had resulted in the spread of the disease, and the state has not shown that public health would be imperiled if less restrictive measures were imposed. This is a lie. Gorsuch doubled down in his concurrence. No apparent reason exists why people may not gather subject to identical restrictions in churches or synagogues. We know the virus rampages through religious services, and the justices were given countless examples and studies showing this, but they ripped apart line 2 anyway, and they lied to do it. Americans died because of this opinion. Amy Coney Barrett, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh rewrote religious freedom and helped spread a lethal virus. Their lawless opinion killed Americans. The decision emboldened crusaders and further politicized public health measures, killing even more, but the court wasn't done. In February 2021, 3 months after the court struck down New York's public health orders, and the first case of the more deadly, more transmissible Delta variant was detected. On February 5th, on Friday, in a pair of shadow docket decisions issued near midnight, the court struck down some of California's public health measures, but neither the court nor the virus were done. By April, COVID cases were rising again, and though down from its mid-January high, the virus was raging. California had thousands of cases and hundreds of deaths daily. In another midnight ruling on the shadow docket, the 5 COVID justices again rewrote the First Amendment in an unsigned 9-paragraph opinion. California had implemented a responsive rule meant to maximize freedom and limit virus transmission by adjusting public health measures according to infection rates. Depending on infection rates, one of 4 tiers of policies applied to an area. In-home gatherings were either banned or limited to a percentage of capacity, or private homes limited to 3 households. Importantly, this applied to all gatherings in private homes, whatever their purpose. Secular gathering in a private home, 3 households. Religious gathering in a private home, 3 households. Everyone was treated equally. But to crusaders, equality is persecution. A pastor in Santa Clara had been meeting once a week with 8 or 10 people for an in-home Bible study. He challenged the measure because studying the Bible in person is more important than other people's lives. A woman who hosted a rotating Bible study with 6 couples every 2 weeks also challenged the rule. Both claimed the rule violated their religious freedom. A 3-judge panel, 2 W appointees and a Trump appointee, held 2-1 that the rule was valid because it treated religion fairly and equally. But Christian privilege, not equality, is the goal of the COVID justices. They went out of their way to decide this case when they didn't need to. By the time it got to the Supreme Court, even on the expedited shadow docket, California had announced a new rule that would take effect in a few days and would allow these Bible studies, perhaps before their next scheduled meetings. Now, do you see why people were so confused at the changing of the laws? Why were the rules changing all the time? It's because of asshats and assholes who decided they wanted to be super spreaders. And they wanted to gather in and become part of a super spreader event. And so these local governments are just desperately trying to appease the people, but keep the spread down as much as they could. They did their best. And And they're like, well, they keep changing all the time. It's because you assholes are constantly bickering and fighting and pushing. So they had to get strategic. They had to get creative about the laws and rules and regulations. All because of the Supreme Court decided to weigh in and decided to make a a pandemic even worse. But this court wants to decide these cases, so ignoring procedure and judicial principle, they jumped in with a midnight ruling just 6 days, 5 really, given how late the decision dropped, before the new rule took effect. The decision is even thinner than the New York opinion, but still it rewrote the law to privilege Christians. The opinion boils down to 2 things. First, if there is an exemption anywhere in any law for anything, then Christians also get an exemption. Second, this first rule holds true even if the exemption has nothing to do with religion. The opinion means that law must be perfectly universal if the court is to consider them non-discriminatory towards Christians. Maybe the law exempts students with a disability. Well, now believers get exemption from the education rule. Maybe there's an exemption in pharmaceutical law based on, say, regional differences in a disease. Well, now pharmacists can deny women birth control. Let's say Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, and religion, exempts certain businesses from a law because of their size. It does. And then Christians also get exemptions from the Civil Rights Act, meaning employment discrimination is now legal for Hobby Lobby, MyPillow, and other businesses that say God told me so. If this sounds crazy to you, it is. The idea that a single exemption to any law necessitates every religious exemption to that same law has been roundly rejected in the legal academy as unprincipled and bizarre. An unattainable proposition that would make every religious objector a law unto himself. An almost unsurmountable barrier to regulation, intellectually incoherent, among other things. It's impossible to overstate the shift in our law. Professor Jim Oleski, an expert in this area, called this the most important free exercise decision since 1990, meaning since the drug counselor case. Stephen Vladeck, a law professor and leading expert on the court's use of the shadow docket, noted at the time that this April 2021 ruling was the 7th time since October 2020 that the justices had issued an emergency injunction, all of which have blocked COVID restrictions in blue states on religious exercise grounds. Before these rulings, the court had gone 5 years without issuing a single injunction pending appeal. In 4 years, the Trump administration made 41 requests on the shadow docket and won 28. Only 8 requests were filed in the 16 previous years, spanning 2 terms of both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and they only won 4. By the end of Trump's term, the shadow docket looked like collusion between Trump justices and the Trump administration to advance the crusade. All of the entities that brought shadow docket cases, only 2 groups won, the Trump administration and the churches. Between August 2020 and July 2021, the court sided with 10 out of 10 churches challenging public health measures amid the coronavirus pandemic. This perfectly encapsulates the court placing religious freedom at the top of a hierarchy of rights. Christianity wins, everyone else loses. In these COVID cases, the court created the hierarchy of rights. Religious freedom is the most important right, sitting atop the other rights and the rights of others. Whatever the law gives to anyone, it must give to every religious claimant. Christians are special and, yes, favored. But in elevating Christianity to a special first class, the Supreme Court made other Americans second-class citizens. The court changed law that has been settled for centuries. The Constitution didn't change, only the court's personnel did. This is why they stole seats and packed the court. Not to put impartial jurists on the bench, but partisan activists. This was the point. I cannot tell you how disgusted as a former Christian, I am disgusted by Christianity as a whole. I don't care what denomination you're from. I have less use for Christianity, especially since the COVID pandemic. The fact that people believed that they have the right to 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 spread a disease willingly to other people without regard. Where is the Christian charity and love in that? Can someone explain to me where the Christianity is in willingly spreading a virus to somebody else? You would think that Christians would be at the forefront. Yeah, they don't care. That's for sure, Chai Chai. Jonah requests to join as a guest. I will accept guests if you can hang on to the end of chapter 12. I'm going to read chapter 12 and then I will accept guests. Yeah, chapter 12 is an easy one. Bruh. Jonah, are you following me yet? You should be following me. It makes your comments stand out, and I can see you easier. Chapter 12 is super short. I can't believe how short it is. The last chapter was harder than that. Is this a debate? It can be. Do you want it to be a debate? If you want to hold on, I can debate. That's not a problem. Okay. All right. If you can hang on till after chapter 12, I'll bring you on. How about that? This will take me less than 15 minutes, I think. DeVault Revisited. American Legion versus American Humanist Association. The Bladensburg Cross Case. No promises? Okay. I'll be keeping my eye on the multi-guess icon. If I see that number tick down, I'll know that you bugged out on me. Don't distract me. Oh, hell no, 50 minutes. Oh, come on. 12 minutes. 12 minutes. How about that? And you're going to learn some good things. I'm telling you, you're going to learn. I'm learning too. I love this. The Crusade has launched with a DeVault and a Christian cross in the middle of the desert. 9 years later, the justices advanced the Crusade by rewriting the First Amendment and obliterating line 3. I'll read fast. How about that? Line 3, in a case involving a Christian cross just 5 miles down the road from the Supreme Court. A gray and salmon concrete is discolored and cracked. Rust exposed rebar and a protective tarp underscores decades of neglect. On the banks of the Anacostia River in Bladensburg, Maryland, in the middle of a traffic island, an almond-shaped plot of land bound by 3 busy 2-lane roads and 40-foot Christian cross is crumbling. From above, the intersection's arc crisscrossing one-way roads and stoplights look like a triangular Celtic knot, with the cross marooned alone and unreachable on one of the islands. The closest parking lot is the pawn shop. Pedestrians must risk at least 2 busy lanes littered with cars and garbage. No sidewalks or crosswalk bridges the rivers of traffic to the island that appears to have been claimed for Christ. Few people visit the island, let alone read the explanatory plaques listing 49 individuals who died in World War I, plaques obscured by unattended overgrown bushes. The cross dominated the space, towering above the streetlights and signs. An American flag on a diminutive pole shrinks in the cross's shadow, a submissive afterthought. A few other memorials are scattered around, not within the busy intersection. She ticked off. Yep, she's gone. Well, my goodness. I mean, if you can't have it... Okay. Maybe she'll be back. It's like, what in the world are you going to debate about if you don't even stay and listen? You know? If you don't stay and learn and read, what are you debating at that point? I swear. The attention span of some people is that of a goldfish. Yes. Anyway, ensuring the contact with the cross is fleeting, but the impression is undeniable. This is a Christian territory. The cross has been Christian since fundraising began in 1918. Trusting in God, donors signed a contribution pledge that highlighted the way of godliness, justice, and liberty, and concluded with our motto, one God, one country, and one flag. We contribute to this memorial cross. One local report detailed a mammoth cross, a likeness of the cross of Calvary as described in the Bible, but interest in the project ended with the war. The American Legion took over the failed project and the land. This simple fact is likely why the cross wasn't viewed as constitutionally problematic when it was finally built 3 years after the transfer, and why it was unchallenged. Erecting a massive Christian cross on private property doesn't violate Line 3. The cross was dedicated in 1925. While the cross and land still belonged to the Legion, the ceremony included only Christian prayers, Christian chaplains, and Christian songs. One a hymn that tells of a cross raising the singers, Nearer, my God, to thee. The Daughters of the Confederacy joined the parade, and one state representative said that the cross is symbolic of Calvary. For a time, the Legion organized regular Christian prayers, memorial services, and even Sunday worship services at the cross. These faded with times as traffic spread around the island. Though there's some disagreement about the timeline, the cross became Line 3 problem in 1961, when the American Legion disclaimed all interest in the land, and it was unequivocally back under state control. Additional Line 3 problems rose in 1985 when the government taxed citizens and spent $100,000 partially rehabilitating the cross, about $250,000 today. The government also claimed without much evidence that it rededicated the cross in 1985, though the alleged rededication featured Christian prayer. By 2001, the Christian cross supposedly represented all Americans who sacrificed their lives for this country. You see how they're shifting the definitions and getting creative? You see how they're doing that? In 2011, the American Humanist Association, on behalf of the local citizens, explained the Line 3 problems to the state commission that manages the intersection and asked for a solution. The year before this complaint, the Ninth Circuit declared a 43-foot cross that dominates a San Diego hilltop unconstitutional under Line 3. The same thing happened with a 12-foot tall roadside cross along Utah highways that the 10th Circuit declared unconstitutional over the objections of a judge named Neil Gorsuch. The decision in these cases, which had been in court for years, came just after the Roberts Court called for the Crusade. But before it had gathered momentum, the Supreme Court decided AHA's challenge to the cross. I'm sorry. Let me read that. American Humanist Association. They got to work on their acronyms. I love the idea of American Humanist Association, but is kind of a weird acronym. They need to work on that. Maybe add another letter. A government display of a Christian cross is not about the free exercise of religion. Our government has no religion to exercise because of Line 3. The attack on state-church separation is crucial to the Crusade's success. Line 3 doesn't apply to us is a core Crusader argument. So the did you hear that? Yep. So the Crusaders framed this as a religious freedom fight. For instance, one senior contributor to the Federalists argued that continued acts of iconoclasm would erode religious freedom. This is the dominant caste seeing equality and loss of unconstitutional privilege as a threat. More importantly, Crusaders are trying to weaponize religious freedom in a way that allows them to use the machinery of the state to promote Christianity. But they wouldn't do that for any other religion, would they? No, they would not. That's the unspoken underlying question in the case. Does religious freedom include the right to use government power to promote and impose the religion on others? The court said yes. Wait for Satanism. Come knocking on the door. Oh, yeah. Yeah, buddy, you have no idea what you've started. Before the Roberts Courts devolved, almost right up until this case was filed, no final decision in any federal court had allowed the government to maintain and display a Christian cross on government land. About 6 months after this case was filed, the Second Circuit upheld the display of the 9/11 cross. The wisdom of that legal challenge aside, I'm mystified by the reverence for this particular cross, which consists of the intersection of two I-beams. There must have been literally thousands of such intersections in the Trade Center. This is how skyscrapers are built. To find one intact seems thoroughly unremarkable, but humans are pattern-seeking animals with a penchant for spotting Jesus in toast and other edibles. So perhaps the fault lies with me. The Federal Appeals Court examined this cross, stuck to this just precedent, holding that the display and maintenance of the cross violates the First Amendment. The Bladensburg cross was the perfect case for the Crusaders to challenge that precedent. It was old. It was undoubtedly Christian, but they could argue that it represented everyone. There were questions about private ownership and government land. Most importantly, it was accessible to the Washington, D.C. media, ensuring far more coverage of the case than a cross in the middle of the desert. Nina Totenberg of NPR drove to the cross for a report. More media meant more Christian outrage at the attempt to equalize their privilege. The cross is so close to the court that it's easy to imagine the justices detouring on their commute to take a look, an opportunity rarely afforded them in their cases. By the time the case reached the Supreme Court, many veterans and veterans groups opposed the cross. To them, the cross embodied the inherent equality in letting a violation of Line 3 stand. For instance, the Jewish War Veterans of the United States of America, the oldest active national veterans organization in America, explained to the court that at least some of the 2,000 Jewish Marylanders who served in World War I and some of the 3,500 Jews who died in the war might have come from the Bladensburg area, and that the cross is a memorial to religious-based exclusion. Yes, we have our new catchphrase. We're going to use the acronym for American Humanist Association. Who was on the Mayflower? Religious extremists who wanted to risk their families' lives to ensure a theocracy that they can control. That's who was on the Mayflower. And as soon as they got the upper hand, they wiped out Native Americans and other white Christian sects that they didn't agree with, also pagans. That's who they were. You can call them Christian all you want, but they were religious extremists and murderers. I don't give a damn how that makes you feel. Moving on. Let's see. Religious-based exclusion. Exactly. That is what the Pilgrims, they stood on. They stood on a memorial to religious-based exclusion. And they wanted to dominate everybody and bring them under the subjection of religious tyranny. That is their legacy. The Freedom from Religion Foundation and other secular organizations, including a secular military group, argued that there are many atheists in foxholes. In 2019, reports show that there are more atheists and agnostics on active duty in the military than Jews, Muslims, and Mormons combined, and that the nuns were the second largest sect in the military, ahead of Catholics, Protestants, and after non-denominational Christians. 1/4 of FFRF's 35,000 members were active duty military or veterans. They seem to do well. Haven't their legacy lived on? Well, their legacy of terror lived on. That has definitely lived on. And we have yet to recover from their legacy. Yeah, they did okay, but you got to remember, the Pilgrims, the religious fanatics that we talked about, eventually died out. Their ideology may not have died out, but they eventually died out as a group. You must be an atheist. What makes you say that? You said the A word. Why would you be so bold? You know what's interesting? The Pilgrims actually had religious freedom when they lived in Holland. They actually had a good life in Holland. The Pilgrims were so bad. The Pilgrims were so bad that the Church of England had to literally kick them out of England. That is how troublesome they were. They were trying to literally take over the government and raise arms to fight against the King of England. They were actually given a way of escape, and they went to Holland. And do you know why they left Holland? Because there was too much freedom. They were worried that their children would be led astray from the faith and be led away by the licentious living of the Dutch. And they couldn't deal with it. They couldn't deal with the fact that they would lose their children to the freedom that they had in Holland. So they went right back to England, and then from England, I believe they sailed to the unknown new world, known as the Americas. Literally almost unaliving half the crew, just so that they could establish a theocracy. What a legacy. They didn't care if their children died. They didn't care if their wives or their husbands died. This is why beliefs are so important. This is why I challenge beliefs the way that I do. Is because beliefs motivate actions. Oh, I didn't know that either. But I remember even as a child sitting in a fundamentalist Christian school, I remember reading about the Pilgrims in Holland. And it never dawned on me, wait a minute, why didn't they stay in Holland? They left Holland to go to the New World, and nearly they all died. Unbelievable. These people had they had no care for their lives. They had no care for the lives of their children. They thought, well, the kids are going to go to heaven anyway. We ought to please God rather than men anyway. Yeah, many are chosen, but few are called. Right. Oh, I remember that chestnut. Timmy, have you been in here before? I got to start writing people's names down. Or did you change your name? I think you've been in... Somebody like you has been in here before. No, you've never been here before? Lucky me. To be blessed by your presence. I got to finish this chapter. I'm almost done. Neil Gorsuch, decision, court cases, Robert... Crusaders, Federalists. Okay. Most right to the case was filed. I read that. Many veterans. Oh, yes. And we're getting to the non-denominations. Yep. 16 high-ranking veterans and military officials, including generals with impressive resumes. One had a Nobel Peace Prize. Argued the cross is exclusionary and dividing soldiers along party lines. Need to write this time down. Okay. Religious preference, harassment, and discrimination are examples of the kinds of divisiveness that can threaten military functions, and nothing is more important to military functioning than internal cohesion. Religion poisons everything. Religion poisons everything. It poisons the way we think. It poisons our internal cohesion in the military. It poisons everything. It really does. It is divisive, and that's what exclusionary religion is meant to do. The problem with these arguments is that crusaders are gunning for Christian supremacy and privilege. They want a weapon to enforce their dominant status. Excluding non-Christians is precisely what the Crusaders sought. Just like the Pilgrims, Timmy. Pulling the strings on the other side was the same Crusader that was involved in the 2010 Cross case. The case that precipitated this crusade, First Liberty Institute. Oh, God. First Liberty Institute has had many names. First Liberty, Liberty Institute, Liberty Legal Institute. But it's Kelly Shackelford's child. In 2001, the organization brought in 565,000. Back then, Liberty Legal Institute was the legal arm of the Free Market Foundation, an affiliate of Focus on the Family, James Dobson's outfit. The institute gobbled up its mother, IRS number and all. In 2019, financials show an income of more than $14 million. Start taxing the churches and religious affiliates. Unbelievable. This shell game that these right-wingers play. In churches around the country, Shackelford often tells a less than humble creation story. The Institute aims to promote Judeo-Christian values and fearmongers about wealthy institutions, liberty, and scrub references to God from the public square. Shackelford used the cross in the Mojave Desert case in 2010 to shed other conservative causes, not because he cared less for those, but because weaponizing religious liberty had become the key to unlocking them all. The Institute wants Christian supremacy. It's fought to keep evolution out of public schools and Bible classes, Jesus portraits, and school-imposed prayer in public schools. Like other crusaders, the Institute wraps this supremacy in religious freedom. Like other crusaders, the Institute wraps this supremacy in religious freedom, which the average American understands as equality. To build the perception that it's fighting for equality rather than supremacy, the Institute seeks stories that it can blow out of proportion and bend into Christian persecution narrative. It delays and drags out cases for years to continue to fundraise and push the persecution message, like the praying football coach mentioned in page 55. What holds society together? It isn't religion. No. Would it be the fear of God? Actually, the fear of God is what is divisive in this country. Morality depends on it. No, you don't have morality. If you are depending on your God for morality, that's not morality. Morality is independent of God and actually would supersede God, in which God would be submissive to that morality. But you exist on the whims of your sky dictator. You don't have morality. You have whims of a deity. That's it. And it can change just like that. If you are under the delusion or the impression that God has given you, Timmy, a special message, a task for you to carry out, and if you are convinced of this, actually, no, we were not a better country. Actually, the quality of life was less when schools were in our courts. I know you have faith. That is what makes your morality so ambiguous, and it flows. It can change at a whim. If you are under the delusion that your God has commanded you to do something heinous, you will do it. That is what faith does. It reduces us to our worst selves. It makes us do things that defy reality, that defy logic. It makes us infantile. It makes us deny reality, for with enough faith, you can believe in absurdities. Yeah, that's what faith does. It makes you absurd. And it makes you hard to deal with, because the people around you who have to live in reality, who have to subject themselves to reality, have to deal with you. This is what delusion is. Faith. But I'm sure you enjoy it. Moving on. Because the Institute coach asked limited belief, I'm not going to read all that. The court allowed the cross to stand by a 7-2 vote. Only Justices Ginsburg and Sotomayor got it right. Justice Alito wrote the main opinion. Though 7 justices voted to uphold the cross, there was mass disagreement about why, with 6 different opinions. Surprising many, Justice Breyer and Kagan, both Jewish, concurred in the result and upheld the cross. Kagan's vote ought not to have surprised. 9 years earlier, as Solicitor General, she defended the Mojave cross, the cross that launched the Crusade. Breyer wrote their opinion, and he argued that the 40-foot tall cross cannot reasonably be understood as a government effort to favor a particular religious sect or to promote religion over non-religion. It cannot reasonably be understood as anything else. Breyer also argued that there's no single formula for determining when a government action crosses line 3. Breyer prefers to decide each case based on feel and perception. Then reverse engineer to that result. He's proved this repeatedly, most notably with the dual Ten Commandments cases in 2005. His version of I can't even say it, Solomonic wisdom and splitting the baby, as it were. The conservative justices disagreed vigorously. Thank you so much. 3.5 billion, excuse me. Okay. And 3.5 billion Christians don't even agree with each other. In fact, there are certain in that 3.5 billion that would like to dominate and wipe out the rest. See, you're not factoring that in, Timmy, are you? You're not factoring in the extremists who want Christians like you unalived because you do not interpret the Bible correctly. Yeah, the Pilgrims would not have liked you, Timmy. You would have been seen as a threat. Yeah. He's proven repeatedly, okay, I've read that, the conservative justices disagreed vigorously about what the new standard should replace line 3. A fruitless, short-sighted disagreement because line 3 is the only standard that works, something humanity discovered after centuries of oppression and bloodshed. And which became obvious at oral argument. I was in a packed courtroom for that argument. This was my first time seeing Kavanaugh on the high bench, and it was jarring. A man credibly accused before the nation's highest deliberative body of assaulting a woman calmly questioned a young female attorney with the same entitlement he showed in his hearing. If not the rage and threats, the whole country will reap the whirlwind. Another man credibly accused of sexual harassment, Thomas, sat a few seats away, manifestly uninterested. As I waited in line with the other members of the Supreme Court bar, a few institute lawyers were gleefully and loudly chatting about the New Jersey church repair case I was litigating and how it would rip open the government coffers for churches. During the oral argument, the institute suggested a standard that would strike down a government act that coerces or prohibits a tangible interference with religious liberty. When pressed by Ginsburg, for an example of something that would violate this proposed coercion standard, the Institute said taxing citizens 3 pence to pay preachers, and yet a few months later in the Montana case, the Institute argued for precisely this kind of coercion, saying the state must tax citizens to fund religious schools. Under more questioning about this new coercion standard, the Institute lawyers copped to another long-standing constitutional violation. One of the court has relied on to ignore line 3. In God we trust certainly promotes religion, endorses religion, no question about it, the Institute lawyer said. He then tried to connect that promotion and endorsement to religious freedom. It's not an effort to proselytize the free exercise. But Justice Kagan interrupted him with questions about whether in Jesus Christ we trust would be coercive. His responses were an indistinct mess. This was a terrible argument. God will give you your just rewards. Repent. Peace be with you. Good night. I'm not interested in the threats of your sky deity. I'm really not. Enjoy your God of war and your bloodthirsty Lord. The blood of the Lamb be with you too. Unbelievable. And they think they have slam dunked the argument. They think they have won, and I'm just going to wash the dust off my feet and travel on. Unbelievable. Sleep tight, Timmy. This was a terrible argument delivered by an experienced lawyer, Michael Carvin, a partner from Jones Day, the world's 5th largest law firm, who spent 35 years at the Department of Justice and had argued 10 Supreme Court cases by that time. Carvin had an impossible task. The problem is there's no way to draw the lines. The Institute Let's see. The problem is the Institute wanted, because line 3 already includes coercion. Anytime the government places the might of we the people behind a religious question or a religious issue, it is inherently coercive. It divides people along religious lines, alienating some, favoring others, and coerces all the people into adopting and endorsing a religious message with which they may or may not agree. A once personal religious issue is now made relevant to one's civic standing. The weight of we the people bearing down on one citizen with a religious message is and can only be coercive. The Institute concluded its oral argument with a final desperate point that seems directed at Alito: hostility. If you ban certain symbols, then or sectarian symbols, then you are necessarily banning all religious symbols, which evinces hostility that conflicts with religious freedom. Of course, the court isn't going to ban religious symbols. Nobody asked for that, and the people and everyone on both sides of this case, included myself included, would condemn the government for doing so. Since it was the Crusaders' final point, we should ask, what's the worst that would have happened if the court had done the right thing and declared the cross unconstitutional? A crumbling, neglected cross would have needed a new home. The town and the American Legion had failed to maintain the cross, so it may not have survived the move, but it wasn't going to survive without another massive infusion of government cash anyway. Another 100,000 had been budgeted. In its place, the government could put up a war memorial that actually honored all our heroes, not just Christians. Individual crosses would still appear as individual grave markers when Christian veterans and service members chose them for the 70 possibilities. But enormous Christian crosses that the government chose to represent the sacrifice of Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, non-religious, and every other non-Christian soldier would have been as impermissible as they are tasteless and exclusionary. Unfortunately, Alito and the 6 other justices chose Christian supremacy and justified it with hypocrisy, hostility, and history. Number 1, hypocrisy. The court said that this massive Christian cross, symbolic of Calvary, was a secular symbol. Notice the dishonesty of the right-wing fundamentalist Christian. It's a secular symbol. The Institute, founded to promote Judeo-Christian values, argued that it wasn't a Christian cross, but a cross-shaped memorial. A memorial that just so happened to be cross-shaped. For principled believers who hold their faith above political power, this is blasphemy. The Baptist Joint Committee's brief argued as such, that a court declaring a Christian cross to be a secular monument is tantamount to the government desacralizing the most sacred symbol of Christianity. Line 3 would normally prevent this, but the opinion also obliterates line 3. Imagine for a moment if the courts had declared that John 3:16 or praying the rosary was secular. He's back again. Hi, Timmy. Couldn't stay away? Can't get to sleep, can you? That's okay. We're glad you're here. Let's see, obliterates. Imagine for a moment if the courts declared, yes, said that. But the Crusaders argued this secular symbol with a wink and a nod. Courts have upheld other religious establishments in the manner, including In God We Trust. As a motto and under God in the pledge, which are no longer religious because any religious freight the words may have been meant to carry originally has long since been lost. Wow, with a straight face. They said that. With a straight face. These have lost through rote repetition any significant religious content. The Institute actually admitted this hypocrisy during oral argument. In God We Trust certainly promotes religion, endorses religion, no question about it. Everyone knew the cross was the symbol of Christianity, but those who professed to be the most devout were willing to lie so that the cross could remain. A Christian lying? Timmy, what do you think? Do you think Christians should be allowed to lie? I don't know. What say you, Timmy? Would it be okay? Would Jesus allow for a Christian to lie as long as Christianity was promoted? I'm asking for a friend. A second aspect of this hypocrisy is that for Alito, a Christian monument built of concrete and cast in bronze can change meanings if the shift morphs a constitutional violation into something constitutionally permissible. But later, the justices would take the opposite stance and strike down a founding American principle, not taxing citizens to build churches or teach religion. As bigoted from the beginning, even though they clearly are not now, founding American principles guaranteeing religious freedom are forever bigoted, while Christian monuments become secular. Number 2, hostility. Alito returned to his favorite religious freedom argument, hostility. He invoked the French reign of terror to describe line 3. He used loaded language like scrubbing, militant, regimes, aggressively hostile. Alito declared that enforcing the Constitution, his job, is hostile to religious freedom. Imagine that. A constitution which protects everybody of every religious faith is considered hostile. Think about that for a minute. Militant secular regimes have carried out such projects in the past. Again, we see the dominant caste's fear of equality manifested as accusations of hostility and persecution. If Alito is truly afraid of a tyrannical majority using the government to impose their anti-religion on religious citizens, we have a ward against such fears, line 3, which he shelved in this case. Instead, Alito held that if a government maintained religious symbols sits on government property long enough, it attains familiarity and historical significance in the local community. Once it passes some vague temporal milestone, removing the symbol, that is, correcting a constitutional violation, may evidence hostility to religion. Importantly, Alito's hostility argument admits that the cross is unconstitutional. If removing the cross is hostile to religion, then displaying the cross promotes religion. These right-wingers are not smart at all. They are not. By claiming religious hostility, Alito is admitting that the cross is religious, not secular, refuting his first argument. It's a fatal catch-22 that none of these justices addressed. Not a single one. What the hell were our justices doing? Sleeping? Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Alito's argument is also inherently unjust and deeply dangerous. It excuses a towering violation because curing it would be hostile to the violator. You broke the rules, but enforcing the rules against you would be hostile to you, so you can get away with it. Alito incentivized rule breaking. This is almost exactly what the court held in the gay wedding cake case. See Chapter 5. And in the follow-up case in Philadelphia, see Chapter 16. We're not there yet. Imagine where we would be if the court always took this approach with other constitutional amendments. Sorry, ladies, enforcing your right to vote under the 19th Amendment would seem hostile to men who prefer the familiarity of male politicians. Do you see the slippery slope that we're headed for? Segregation has attained familiarity and historical significance in the local community. To cure it now, just because it violates the Equal Protection Clause, might appear hostile to white people. This is as ridiculous as it is dangerous. Alito summed up this fear-mongering and hostility at oral arguments with a dramatic hypothetical about all the other government crosses. Assuming for the sake of argument, we say you go take down all the crosses. What message does that send when people see that on TV, when they see crosses all over the country being knocked down? The hypothetical drove Alito, Gorsuch, and Breyer to distraction, sending nearly a quarter of the challengers' time on that question alone. If you win, tear them down, said Breyer. But for that matter, what message does women voting send? Or different races going to the same school? It sends a message of equality, not supremacy. So, too here. The message would be that the Constitution comes first, that our government does not belong to one religion or to the Christians, but to we the people. That our government cannot divide people by religion. It cannot exclude non-Christians who fought and died for their country. It cannot honor only those who are the right religion. Right, Timmy? The message it would send is that a secular government is the only true guarantee for religious freedom. Perhaps most importantly, it would tell this country that rule of law is supreme. If you disagree with my framing of this moment as a crusade, this case leaves you with very little. At best, you're left with a cowardly court, afraid that Americans might be upset with the court or even think it hostile for upholding the Constitution. Boo fucking who. The court failed to uphold the Constitution. At best, 7 justices were afraid to order the cross removed. That fear in a nation with a church on practically every other street corner and with crosses dominating the landscape is cowardly, or it's something more deliberate. Number 3, history. Alito carefully curated a few moments from American history to justify his opinion and the cross. He elevated bad history over legal principle. This revisionist history was intended to show that America has always been a Christian nation. Sound familiar, Timmy? This is precisely why I wrote The Founding Myth. Alito's historical missteps are corrected in that book. I won't recapitulate all the other arguments here, but 2 are worth highlighting because they are so bad and thoroughly debunked that it helps show the dishonesty of Alito's opinion. He claimed that the 10 Commandments have historical significance as one of the founders of our legal system. Chapters 13 through 22 of The Founding Myth debunk this. Alito also wrote about how religion and morality were mentioned in George Washington's farewell address and the Northwest Ordinance. This is such a common myth I debunked in Chapter 2. The quoted language actually proves the founders did not turn to religious principles when crafting our Constitution. Contradicting Alito's invocation of the history, none of Alito's poor history is worthy of a Supreme Court opinion, but distorted history is central to the Crusader. I'm trying to avoid legalese in this book, but this case requires a short discussion of the Lemon Test because the court threw out 5 decades of precedent. The Lemon Test is named after the landmark decision in Lemon versus Kutzman in 1971. The court surveyed all the Line 3 cases it had decided and synthesized a simple 3-part test to determine whether the government action crossed that line. Does the challenged government action 1. have a secular purpose, 2. have a primary effect that neither advances nor inhibits religion, 3. foster excessive government entanglement with religion? If the government action fails any one of these 3 prongs, it violates the Constitution. That's the Lemon Test. This test was strong precedent, older than Roe v. Wade, and issued in an 8-1 decision built on all courts' earlier cases. But because the Lemon Test enforced Line 3, it was a barrier to the Crusade and the Crusader and under siege for years. In this opinion, the court crucified the Lemon Test on the Bladensburg Cross. Excellent choice of words. The court defended a symbol of an openly advanced Christian supremacy. Alito laid out a roadmap to preserve these monuments to Christians' cultural dominance and privilege. Thank you for sharing the live. I appreciate it. As our society becomes more and more religiously diverse, a community may preserve such monuments, symbols, and practices for the sake of their historical significance or their place in a common cultural heritage. The subtext is clear. As Christians lose their majority and their privilege, fallacious claims of hostility in history will allow them to preserve their privilege, even unconstitutional privilege. In a court that loves unearthing hostility towards Christians, it again misses the same hostility against non-Christians. The Christian cross does not represent Jews, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, atheists, agnostics, pagans, non-Christians, and even Christians who interpret the Bible differently. Those service people are not simply ignored, they are blacklisted. What could be more hostile than honoring those who are of the correct religion and excluding everyone else? Thus ends chapter 12. Next time we meet again, we will be doing chapter 13, targeting children. You know, that's amazing. Just recently, they're trying to enact a law that would force public schools to teach Christianity. They would enforce their version of Christianity. And the MAGA view of history. Isn't that amazing? This book is prophetic. It lays it all out, the entire plan, what they've been planning for decades. And they're going to keep coming, too. They're going to keep trying. These fundamentalists are dangerous, and they will not stop. And what's worse, they have faith, like Timmy in the comments. I see the person who wanted to debate me is gone. I tell you what, didn't have the... They wanted to debate me, but they couldn't stick around for... Well, whatever. Please accept guests like Timmy. Oh, that's fine. If I see them in the multi-guest... I think Timmy had to go to bed or whatever. But yeah, there's nobody in the guest list. Yeah, she left 2 seconds after you said wait. Exactly. The attention span of a goldfish. This is what we're left to in this country. And this is why we are destroyed. If I may bring a Christian colloquialism out to you, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That's actually a biblical quote. We are being destroyed because of our ignorance. And this is why we continue fighting the same battles over and over and over again, because we haven't learned. We haven't learned from history, and we just want to be distracted. We love to be entertained, and if it's not entertaining enough, it's not worth our time. Pretty interesting, isn't it? Well, this has been Skeptically Speaking, coming at you live and in living color. Please become a skeptic. Please join the team. Follow, share the live, and if you can, find me on YouTube. Give me a subscribe. I would appreciate that, please. And on Sunday nights, we go live. Every Sunday night, we do a live, and we talk about politics and religion. But the weekdays I reserve for readings. And again, we've got the American Crusade. Next is going to be Howard... let me see. Let me see if I've said it right. I keep saying it wrong. Howard Zinn. A People's History of the Americas, of the United States. That's a pretty rich tome. So I read these books, and you can find them on my YouTube. You can listen to them. If you haven't been able to follow along, you can follow along by subscribing to the channel, Skeptically G and Skeptically Speaking. And you'll see readings of the books on both channels. But this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. This has been Skeptically Speaking. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Blue Sky. You can find me on Threads, Facebook, Substack. You can find me... where can't you find me? TikTok, you're here. YouTube, of course. So with that, I will say goodnight. We'll see you later on the next stream. Take care, everybody.